This is the Detroit Sports Podcast Network.
The biggest icon in podcasting.
Welcome in, everybody, to this week's episode of Doc and Jock. I am the Doc, John Macaroon. Joining me, my guy Adam, the Jock Strozinski. We got a lot to get into. The Lions made news, parting ways with a cornerback that probably was never going to pan out here in Detroit. We got a lot to talk about regarding what it means for the draft. Big news made by General Manager Brad Holmes on Tuesday afternoon. And then second half of the podcast, stay tuned. We're going to bring the same energy because finally, hallelujah, the Pistons have broken free from the shackles of being coached by Dwane Casey. There ain't nobody happier than Doc and Jock because finally we can talk about the Pistons and their bright future after they parted ways with their coach that was never going to get the ear of the roster. And he said it himself. It's time for a new voice. It was time for a new voice 700 days ago. We still, again, had to sit through that disaster, so we'll talk about it. And then a quick note, we'll definitely hit on the Tigers and their disastrous start and the nonsense that they bring to the table as well. Because Jeff Okudah, gone, traded for a 5th-round draft pick. Really embarrassing when you look at it. The number 3 overall pick, that's not how you build a franchise, but this doesn't go on Brad Holmes' record. He got rid of the problem. And it goes to show you, when you are around the NFL, you realize if you're not drafted by a general manager, the level of investment's not the same. Like Aiden Hutchinson, Josh Paschal, Penei Sewell, Amon-Ra St. Brown, Jameson Williams, they're all going to get a bunch of leeway with general manager Brad Holmes and the coaching staff. They were brought in by this dude. They were looked at and evaluated and talked to. Jeff Okudah, from the regime before, not going to be invested in heavily. They're not going to be as patient with him. You saw what you saw out on the field, and it wasn't good enough. Too up and down, not a player they could rely upon to be available, to be on the field, and they parted ways with him. Lots to get into regarding the reaction, but by and large, Doc and Jock told you on draft day, you don't take a corner at number 3. It only is going to end up being bad, and that's what happened. Team parted ways, moved on. They got some capital now, 9 picks in the draft. They get a 5th-round pick, 2 relatively close picks in the 5th round. But bottom line, the Jeff Okudah era has come to a close, and it was a big, fat dud.
Yeah, man, it was a total dud. It's very rare that you and I get to come on this podcast. I shouldn't say that. It happens quite a bit. We're pretty smart. We know what we're doing. I would just like to pat ourselves on the back right now because we called this. We called this on day one. We called this before the draft even took place. We said, look, they're probably going to draft this guy, and it's not going to work out. You don't invest that high a capital in that position. And look what happened. It worked out. It worked out the way we said. We've been right about Jeff Okudah all along. So pat yourself on the back, Doc. I'm patting myself on the back right now. I don't do that nearly enough. And I'm saying, look, good job on me because this organization, again, failed with addressing that position. Now, here's the thing. You have hit the reset button, and you hit the reset button hard, and you hit it, and you got it right. You got a general manager, and you got a head coach who can see the same things we see and can evaluate talent correctly. And this is the thing that I think may happen on draft day, right? This is what I think might happen with this Jeff Okudah trade. Obviously, Lions went out, and they totally have redone their secondary. Now, don't be surprised if there is a corner that is taken in the 1st round. And don't be surprised if that 5th-round pick that the Lions acquired for Jeff Okudah gets packaged so the Lions can move up and draft that corner somewhere, I don't know, I'm thinking between 13 and 18 in that 1st round. Now, obviously, they've got the 18th overall pick, but don't be surprised if they package that 5th-round pick and move up to 13, 14, 15, 16. At 17, I don't know if you've got to give a 5th-round pick to move up that high. But I am reading the situation like this, okay? Jeff Okudah was probably going to be cut, all right? Jeff Okudah wasn't going to make this team. Either that or they just did not see the value in Jeff Okudah. Obviously, they did not pick up his fifth-year option. He wasn't part of the future. They weren't planning to keep him around. So what do? You move on from the guy. And look, I think the fifth-round draft pick that you're getting back, I think the value may be a little bit low, but you weren't going to keep him is what this tells me, right? So get something for nothing, and that's what they did. They got something for nothing. And what this tells me is going into this draft, there's a cornerback out there that these guys like. And whether he's going to be drafted in later on in the first round or whether he's going to be drafted high in the second round, there's a cornerback out there that they see value in. There's a guy out there who they're willing to bring in. And look, we talk about it all the time. Cornerbacks tend to take a year or two to develop, right? Jeff Okudah was in year 4, and you started to see something, and obviously it wasn't enough. So they are comfortable with investing in a cornerback and then sitting him behind all the guys that they have brought in. All the guys that they have brought in are going to hit the field and going to play for you. Whoever they draft, going to sit behind them. He will be a rotational player. They will work him in. He will probably give you 10, 12, 15 snaps a game, and that's about it. And then they expect him to take off the following year. They will bring him along slow. That is what this tells me. What this tells me is you have a general manager who knows what the hell he's doing and sees that there's a guy out there that will benefit this team. Jeff Okudah, they don't see the value in him. They don't see him worth keeping around. They don't even see worth trying to get the compensatory value. They see him as a fifth round draft pick. It's good enough. Let's move on. Let's cut ties. Maybe Atlanta works better for him. They're then going to take that 5th round draft pick. They're probably going to package that with the first, with their second first round pick, and they're probably going to move up and they're going to go get a guy. If Devin Witherspoon's there, it'll probably be him. If it's Cam Smith, it might be him. If there's another guy out there that they like, it might be that guy. It might be Joey Porter Jr. I mean, if you go through and you do your own mock drafts, you've done a ton of them. I've done a ton of them. Every time you get to 18, right? It really, there wasn't a position there, or there wasn't a guy there that I was like, this team must get. There has to be a guy that this team must go out and grab, right? And now what they've done is they've, again, given themselves a little bit more flexibility. You get an extra 5th round pick. You can now bundle that. And you know what? You can move up and you can get into that more elite tier of cornerbacks instead of going with who's going to be left in the 2nd round or who might be left over after they're already picked through. I think this pick right here allows this team a little bit more flexibility to be out to go and get a guy that they really value. And that's what this tells me. Moving on from Jeff Okudah tells me that the Lions have found somebody that they deem worthy of going and grabbing. And don't be surprised if that 5th round pick is packaged with that second first round pick so they can move up and they can get a guy that they deem worthy. I'm excited for this. I think it is exciting on a couple of different fronts. One, we get to move on from Jeff Okudah. He was never going to pan out here, right? He came in and it seemed like the fan base was 50-50 on him. Either he was going to be great or he wasn't going to be anything. And in our camp, he wasn't going to be anything. So now we get to cut ties and move on. And the front office, the coaching staff, the overall personnel that is running this team says we can go and we can do better. And I think that's what they're going to do. I'm pumped about it. I was a little taken aback that it was only a 5th round pick, but hell, who the hell cares at this point? You get to move on, and I think the next person's going to come in is going to be much better for this team. Yeah,
and that's the debate we're going to have here is should they have just held on to him maybe until the draft? Maybe you understand, okay, Atlanta's interested in a 5th. Maybe you get a 4th from a more desperate team or a throw-in for another trade. Did they maximize what they could get from him? I think they did. I don't think a guy that's been often injured that Achilles situation was really detrimental to his value. I think that it just wipes away everything that you can really legitimately try and get. And it stinks, but the only hope you could have had maybe is the question mark that's being debated now online is, should you have just rostered him, played him this year, and see if he can get anything out of him? I mean, you have a guy that was starting to build something in 2022 before a head injury kind of derailed the last 3-4 games of his season. Do you think they could have got anything out of it? If you have a good program, the level of competition would have been great with Jerry Jacobs, with C.J. Gardner-Johnson, with Cam Sutton. You don't think the rub that Okudah could have gotten, maybe even just to see in training camp, does this guy got any juice left to be able to compete? I mean, you really disrespected him at the highest level by bringing in 3 defensive backs, and you could draft another one. I think that's one way that, you know what, to be honest, I wouldn't be, and this is pure speculation, I wouldn't be surprised if Okudah said something like, okay, I got the message, what's going on here? He did change agents. I think that you would not be terribly surprised if you heard that Okudah went and pushed the issue as well, saying, look, okay, I'm not happy here. I want to move on to something, another opportunity, like a mutual parting of the ways. I wouldn't be surprised if I heard that too, because the team clearly was not satisfied with your services when they go out and get 3 new guys. And the talk is that the 5th-year option's not going to happen. That's a clear sign, like, okay, I know that you know that I know you don't want me. Let's make this happen, and I'm good. Thank you for the love and respect for the last year. I want out. And no doubt about it. I mean, clearly the organization told him literally in 50 different ways, we don't want you.
I wouldn't be surprised if something came out of him maybe just not fitting into the culture or the foundation that they want to establish here. I find it really weird that the moment it's announced, you have a wide receiver on this team in JMO who is tweeting about getting his number. Like his corpse isn't even cold yet. Like the ink on the paper to complete the trade hasn't even dried yet, and you've got a wide receiver being like, I want that number. Sorry for anybody who bought the number 9 jersey. I'm going to get that number 1. Like, what does that tell you? Like, he just kind of seems like he might be the odd man out in the locker room. That's kind of what I read into that situation. And look, Jameson Williams, I think, is going to be a very interesting follow for his entire Lions career, whether it be the 5 years that he's here on his first round deal, or if it is longer term. I think he's going to be a very interesting social media follow, because this guy, it almost seems like he is reactionary with how he tweets, right? Like something happens, he's got to respond and react to it. You have rumors about Lamar Jackson coming here, he's got to like it, and he's got to comment, and he's got to do some stuff with it. You've got a cornerback in your team that just was traded. He had a number that you wanted. You got to comment and you got to mention it. So, like, I think is incredibly interesting, because I don't know how well that's going to go over with Lions fans over the long haul. If you're being productive and you're helping this team win games, it'll be cool. The moment you're not, I think it gets really salty and really testy with Lions fans. We'll see what happens there. I think that's just something we need to watch going forward. But the moment that it's announced that his number is now available because he's been traded, you've got a guy who's basically opining for that number. And there was a follow-up tweet where he's willing to box whoever for it. Like, what does that tell you about Jeff Okudah? I mean, I think there might be a little bit of either you just don't fit with the program, or maybe you are possibly a locker room cancer, or I don't know, you're just not respected around here, is kind of what that tells me. And look, I might be reading too much into it. I really might be. But I was shocked, man. I was like, Jesus, this dude's a 4-year veteran, or a 3-year veteran going on his 4th year here, and you basically have the flashy rookie wide receiver being like, yeah, he's a dead corpse. I want that number. Thank you very much. Here's your card. Just kind of shocked me, man. Shocked me. I just don't know if Okudah was the right fit here. And look, like you said when we opened this program, if you are not drafted by this general manager, if this coaching staff inherits you, there are no ties. You are not sacred. You will be put onto the trading block. You will be put onto the chopping block, and it is see you later, alligator.
Yeah, so you're okay with it? You don't think that there's no redeeming quality to keep Okudah on the roster for 2023 and see what happens? The value of the 5th-round pick probably more to the Lions than it is to have Okudah on the field?
I think it would have been interesting to keep him here, but I think in the long term, he wasn't part of the future. So you trade him to get something for nothing, right? So I think that's probably the smarter move. I think keeping him, there probably was some value to him being on the field and just kind of seeing if he could raise his game and raise his level. But I think when you go to renegotiate a contract with him, because again, you're not picking up the 5th-year option. And if you did pick up the 5th-year option, it was going to be, I think it was going to cost you like $11 million, maybe $12 million, depending on what you guys negotiated. And look, by trading him, you're saving $5.2 million, which you could then put towards a backup quarterback that the Lions have an outstanding offer with that we're going to talk about here shortly. So there's a bit of a cap savings there. I think by trading him, you get the cap relief. I think you save yourself from going down a wormhole where you probably weren't going to keep him and you weren't going to get anything for him. And now what you can do is you can turn around and you can get a young player who you can rotate in, who will be his replacement in 2 years. And I think that's where the value comes from.
Okay, makes sense. And I agree. I think that Brad Holmes didn't want to create a situation in which maybe a player that could have drawn you a draft pick or that could have got some value that you can make a quick decision on and not have it. Because look, what were we going to talk about? Rookie minicamp. We're going to talk about Okudah. We're going to have an opportunity. This podcast drops on Thursday. On Wednesday, several of the assistant coaches are going to talk to the media. They're obviously going to be asked about Okudah. If he was going to be on the roster, you're going to ask Dre Bly, what's the deal with Okudah?
Got to talk to Dre Bly about it. Yeah,
exactly.
Sure.
You're going to ask
his reaction.
So you also remove a distraction if you know a guy is not part of your long-term future. And I think the Lions realize, look, we want a guy that's going to be available, produce, and do things at a high level consistently. And if it's not, then Dan Campbell said it, and that's the business side of it. If you're not doing exactly what the organization wants, you got to move on. And it's just that simple. And Dan Campbell said it, no pretenses, no false pretenses, that the organization is always looking to upgrade, no matter what, at any position. And that includes at defensive back. I mean, they brought 3. They could draft another. So this team is doing the things that you would expect winning teams to do, cut ties with dead weight. And that's all you can do.
I was going to say, does it surprise you? Does it feel weird to you that this team is moving on from talented individuals, like guys who produced for you and guys who produced at a relatively high level for you? They're just moving on. Like you had a guy like DJ Shark. When he played, he was productive. They just moved on from him. You could have signed him for a much cheaper deal than you gave him before. You just moved on from him. Jamal Williams could have maybe saved a few bucks signing him instead of David Montgomery. He rebuffed your first offer. You're like, cool, we're moving on. They're looking to move on from guys like Haloti Vaitai. You just moved on from a high draft pick in Jeff Okudah. Like moving on from guys where there was quite a bit of capital invested and guys who really produced for you the following or the previous season. To me, this is exactly like you said, what good teams do. It feels a little uncomfortable to me because we haven't seen this. We haven't really experienced this, but this is what good teams do. You have players who are valuable and who produce for you and are good for you. And you're like, you know what? Who's the next guy up? Who's got a little bit more potential? Who's got a little bit more talent? Who can we bring in to get this, to squeeze the same amount of production out of and be a little bit cheaper? And that's what they're doing.
And here's the thing. Here's the joy and why I liked the hire of Dan Campbell. He was part of not only the Sean Payton tree, he grew up, he had his football career with Bill Parcells. And Bill Parcells was the ultimate hard ass, where if you didn't cut ties, he was talking. If you didn't do what you got to do, and it was great to have for a period of time working with a former NFL scout who kind of understood the Bill Parcells model, and he gave so much information, so much quality knowledge regarding the mindset of Bill Parcells, regarding players you can win with, players you can't, the idea of constantly delivering on a daily basis, having the right mindset, having the ability. So Dan Campbell knows, and Aaron Glenn knows. You know, Aaron Glenn is not going to sit there and have his reputation be staked to Jeff Okudah, period. And it's just the way it is. So, you know what was funny, to be honest? And it is funny in the age of social media and how sensitive. I always question myself, how sensitive would I be if I'm an NFL player? And the first thing that you see is Aaron Glenn looking like he was going to cream his pants when C.J. Gardner walked in, and he's like, and C.J. Gardner's like, that's like my father figure. And you're like, God dang. And then when Aaron Glenn goes to the annual league meetings, what's the quote that comes out from Aaron Glenn? He's got to get better, just like everybody else. And you're like, oh my God. You know, you get the fatherly love from Aaron Glenn if you're C.J. Gardner-Johnson. And if you're Jeff Okudah, we want him to compete. We want him to get better. And he's got to, you know, you get the NFL to, I would be like, okay, I bet you that photo probably was the final straw. And then afterwards, having your defensive coordinator just kind of talk about, well, yeah, we expect everybody to get better and that kind of talk. It wasn't as glowing as per se that you would have gotten from one of your own guys. And that's the way it is. Good for Jeff Okudah, get an opportunity with the Falcons. You're going to move on. Lions made a lot of news this week, and it's good. It's good news because a spot that they needed also to upgrade besides defensive back was the backup quarterback spot. And you got to report that Teddy Bridgewater was made a strong contract offer. Now, in my mind, that's fair. You go out there and you want a guy, you got to make an offer, probably in the neighborhood of $5 million or a lot guaranteed. But the word that you got was Teddy wants to play the market a little more, wants to see if there's another opportunity, wants to take his time. And I get it. In my mind, I think it's a great decision by the Lions. They're familiar with him. He's solid enough that I think he could do some things should you need to call upon him. But if you're Teddy Bridgewater, you're not going to want to sign with the Lions because Jared Goff is pretty durable. You're never going to see the field. So in essence, you're taking a backup job. And I think a guy like that would be really, really down on his luck because I think he believes he's a starter. I think he believes that if there's an injury in camp, if there's a situation where I can go where you kind of like a situation like the Jets were last year where everybody knows the starter sucks, but you just need to validate him a little bit more and actually go out there and wait 4 games, and then a guy like Zach Wilson will bomb, and then you get your chance. I think he's waiting for that. Bridgewater has no future with the Lions. Jared Goff, the team has been built around Jared Goff. So, in essence, you're coming in to be a clipboard holder, to be a film watcher, to be a number 2 fully. I wouldn't take it if I was Teddy Bridgewater. I think he can do better. But if the Lions are able to land him, you then solve a big problem, and you don't have to draft anybody. You can get 9 good NFL players and not have to worry about the quarterback position.
This is the thing. I love the fact that this came out. And I love, we were talking about this a couple weeks ago, how they should go out and go after Teddy Bridgewater and how he would be the perfect accompaniment in that quarterback room, right? Here's the thing too. You've got a guy like Hendon Hooker coming in for a visit, right? He might be your mid-round quarterback that you get, maybe late second. I don't know, depending kind of how everything works out. I think by the signing of Nate Sudfeld, because remember, Nate Sudfeld signed, and we're like, well, that's our room. That sucks. It's right where we're at. If you look at Nate Sudfeld's contract, they could cut him tomorrow, and it's not going to cost this team anything. It's not going to hurt this team at all. I think you offer this contract to Teddy Bridgewater. He figures out if he wants to play. I think that's great. He says yes. Okay, cool. You then go out and you go to the draft, and you've got the ability to get a guy like Hendon Hooker. You've got the ability to get a guy like Dorian Thompson-Robinson, and you can bring either one of those guys in as your young guy to learn basically behind Teddy Bridgewater, to learn behind Jared Goff. And I think they're 2 different styles of quarterbacks, which I think are awesome. Also, Teddy Bridgewater is just a professional. He's a professional quarterback. Like, the guy can do a ton of different things. He's been through all of it, the highest of highs, the lowest of lows, and the guy can produce. He can produce at an extremely high level. I think Teddy Bridgewater coming to Detroit solves a world of problems. I think 1, solidifies your quarterback room, right? 2, allows you the ability to go out, and if you wanted to, you could draft that future quarterback, whether it be Hendon Hooker or DTR. If you wanted to, you could stay with Nate Sudfeld. If it's a 2 or a 3 year contract for Teddy Bridgewater, you can then next year, if you get some extra draft capital, you can maybe pair that with your draft pick next year and move up and maybe go get your quarterback of the future next year. I think what they've done here is awesome. And I think Teddy Bridgewater coming here is a royal seal of approval, at least from me. I love Teddy Bridgewater coming here. I think it's a fantastic idea because I think it allows you a ton of options with what you do in that quarterback room, whether it's bringing in a rookie that you go out and draft, or whether it's waiting and keeping Nate Sudfeld around for 1 more year and then going and grabbing that quarterback of your future. I think Teddy Bridgewater makes all the sense in the world, and I absolutely love it.
You're not worried about his injury history, the situation?
No!
Nothing?
No, because here's the deal. This is why. We're all hoping that Jared Goff holds up, right? Jared Goff doesn't have any injury problems. That's the hope, right? going into the season, you don't ever necessarily count on your quarterback missing any games. But I think in the back of our head and in our gut, we always count on them missing one or two. So I have no problems with Jared Goff. He's been actually pretty durable most of his career. I think it was just before he got traded, he had it was like a thumb or finger injury, and he even played through most of that. Jared Goff's been incredibly durable. So I don't necessarily worry about Teddy Bridgewater getting a ton of time where he can get nicked up or banged up. The thing is, when Teddy Bridgewater does get in games, and as long as he's able to stay upright and he's not hurt, he's actually a really productive quarterback. We have the second highest paid offensive line, I think, and it is one of the best offensive lines in all of football. I think that with a run game, because remember, this team wants to be more run first, I think that helps spell your quarterback. That helps keep your quarterback healthy. It helps keep him moving forward. I think him coming here just makes all the sense in the world. I think it's an absolute score, and I don't have any concerns with his health issues. Zero whatsoever.
Okay, yeah, I hope he takes the opportunity. I think when he looks around and he shops around, maybe other teams might offer more money, but we'll see. They said it's a strong contract offer, so they made a serious play, and maybe it's just put out there to potentially, let the world know that, hey, we are serious about the backup spot. The quarterback position, some people online, and I greatly respect the opinion, because, in a black or white world, I had said on Twitter at Detroit Podcast, hey, if you get Teddy Bridgewater, does that mean you don't draft a quarterback? People are like, no, sign Teddy Bridgewater and draft a quarterback. Let them compete with Nate Sudfeld and see what you got. And I think that makes sense too. Take somebody. If you like an Aiden O'Connell, if you like one of the players later on in the draft, if you like Thompson Robinson, the upstart from UCLA, hey, that's good too. I love it. I love the opportunity that the Lions have given themselves. And when you look at the team, they're just doing things right. The hype is there, and for once, I do think the team will have an opportunity to match the hype with their play, with their effort level, with the talent on the roster, with the message that was sent. Hey, you don't perform, you're not here. And that's the nature of the game. Raise your game, be better, be about our program, and you'll have a job. And man, that's a lot of pressure, man. With that money on the line and the level of competition, whew, I'm grateful. I'm grateful that I'm in a position where the competition level in the mental health and podcast field, not as great as the NFL, where there's always somebody around the corner just waiting to pick off your job. But a great week, A+ week for the Detroit Lions, and A+++ week for the Pistons. Finally, I mean, man, Dwane Casey getting all the love from the organization, all the love from the media, being that he made the great decision to do what's best for the organization and step down. I mean, finally, Tom Gores made an appearance at a game and had to, I don't know what you were talking to Tom Gores about for 40 minutes. I could have had that conversation with Dwane Casey in 5 minutes. You walk in there and you say, man, Dwane, I just saw this game that I just sat through and it was horrible. Couldn't even keep it within double digits. All right, we're moving in a different direction. We're going to have an opportunity for you. All right, this is it. Bye. 6 minutes, most. What are you talking to him about? What are you, like, giving him all the pleasantries, getting all the scoop? 40 minutes to tell him that he was gone? And I love the spin of Dwayne's, like, after the final blowout loss to the Bulls, I've made the decision that I think is best for me and my family. I'm going to move to the front office. Man, you got 17 wins. You're horrible. You had a horrible tenure. You didn't advance the cause of what you're trying to do. Yes, there's a lot of excuses that can be made, but in the end, Dwane Casey is no longer the head coach of the Pistons, and finally, the future can be bright for an organization that has been in the tank. And that's what it was. Obviously, that's what the team was doing. But in the end, you could have some level of an identity. You could have some level of defense. You didn't have to lose by that wide of a margin. You could have had some level of attention and detail on defense, but there was none. And he was honest. He was forthright and honest. I'll give him credit. He said this team needs a new voice. Yeah, no shit, they needed a new voice. They needed a new voice 700 days ago. There were no signs of progress. And here's the thing. Dwane Casey doesn't get credit for developing Jaden Ivey. Jaden Ivey has talent. Duren has talent. They're first-round picks. You don't get credit for that. I need credit from developing the likes of a Saban Lee, develop Isaiah Livers, develop other guys that can shoot the ball. They have no guys that can shoot the ball consistently. They have no defensive identity. They weren't competitive in their games. Every fourth quarter you lose, I mean, I am sad. A brief moment of silence because I feel like my sports gambling career is going to take a drastic career turn now. I'll be honest, cuz I bet every Pistons loss this year. $25, $30, every game the Pistons lost, I think I had a little action on, and it basically paid half a mortgage. I was like, shit. And now the Tigers are in the same boat. I can boast a very over 60% win percentage because the Pistons were horrible. They were absolutely horrible. And now, finally, you can see if they get the right guy. If they get the pimp, Udoka, listen, I'm rewriting the HR department. You're allowed to fraternize as long as they're not married. Look, we can have standards. We can have rules. You're allowed to fraternize with the help. Anybody you want. The only caveat, coach, is kind of do a background check. Make sure these ladies aren't, like, married. And if they're not, have at it. Do what you got to do. But you got to go out there, and for me, it's Udoka or bust. I don't care about Charles Lee. I don't care about Jerry Stackhouse. I don't even care about the former Pistons legend Chauncey Billups. Get the guy that was in the finals 1 year after a first-round exit. It's Udoka or bust for the Pistons. But if you can hear the excitement in my voice, there is a proud basketball fan in this body that had to be dormant for 3 years because that coach was doing nothing for anybody but just being a nice human being to the reporters. Great. I have a strong competitive fire. I don't care about how nice Coach Casey was. I wanted to see the team at least perform at a better level than what they did. And now he's gone. He's got a cush gig in the front office. He can retire gracefully. Bro, you know how much he made? 5 years, $35 million. That was, and I'm also about value. He didn't give me $35 million worth of coaching, in my opinion. He gave $18.4 million. And when you cut a guy like me $17 million in value, I'm very pissed. So I need $17 more million out of you. So what you got to do, Dwane, is you got to come out there and you got to say, Victor Wembanyama, if he comes here, will be great. He'll be perfect. He won't be Manute Bull. He'll be a epic player. You got to come out there and you got to take credit for a player to get some of that $17 million that I felt you cheated me. So in my mind, I'm very happy. I'm excited. I could do a little dance. Dwane Casey is out. The Pistons are back, baby.
Look, I think you should be excited. Do you realize that Dwane Casey, the most wins he had in a season here as a Detroit Piston was 23?
No,
23 wins.
No, he got 41 the first year. He was part of that janky team that was the very first year. I think he went 41 and 41.
Oh, was that the year they went to the playoffs?
Yeah, he got to the playoffs. Yes.
Oh man, how long ago was that? Look, I don't
5 years ago. 5 years ago.
I don't even remember how long. Look, that's how bad they've been.
Yes, they got to the playoffs and got bounced out, and then then 4 years they yanked the rug out from under him and gave him a horrible team. But in essence, they paid him $35 million to take the bullets. He should have left after year 3. He should have been like, "This shit ain't for me," But in the end, it's the weirdest thing. I couldn't do it. I'd get too pissed after year 3 being like, this shit's going nowhere. I don't care. I'm going to make money. I can't be a guy that's going to take bullets for your organization while you guys rebuild. Find somebody else. But he took the $35 million in order to be here for 4 years where basically he got paid to be the fall guy. And he knew it. I just couldn't do it.
So I guess that leads to looking towards the future, right? So I'm in lockstep with you, right? It should be Udoka. It should be your next head coach. And obviously, you've got to do a bit of an investigation because he does come with some baggage that he had in Boston. But I think if you look at what he did in Boston, where he helped develop players, where he helped establish an identity, where he helped establish defense as a bit of a priority, those are all things that the Detroit Pistons are lacking, right? Zero identity. They don't do any sort of job on the defensive end of the ball. You've got guys who are offensively talented, but you now have to really develop and cultivate that talent. So he's my number one guy. Jay Wright, if he's interested in coming to the NBA, I'm willing to take a chance. I'm willing to sit down and listen and talk to him. But really, that's as far as my list goes. It's 2 guys. I don't care about anybody else. I don't want anybody else. I want guys who, 1, value defense, and 2, can help develop young players and really help cultivate what they do well. These are all things that Dwane Casey didn't really do, didn't really help take care of here. And look, if you look at what his overall record was, it was absolute garbage. If you look at what he's done and what this team is now, I can't say that he was the right choice. I can't say that what he's done has helped move this organization forward. Yeah, you've got some pieces, but like this team has zero identity. This team has zero pulse. I think the fan base feels a little bit alienated, and I don't think anybody really cares. Like you said, you basically bet on them to lose all 82 games that they had, and you made money doing that. So it's tough. It's tough as a fan to watch your favorite basketball team basically implode from the inside out. So look, I'm happy Dwane Casey's stepping aside. I am excited for what may come. For me, I'm in lockstep with you. There's one name at the very, very top, and it's got a bullet point next to it. And then after that, it's Jay Wright, the former Villanova coach, if he's interested in coaching, just because I know he can develop players and I know he prioritizes defense. And I think he might be able to get through to some of these younger players as well.
I got a question, and it might involve more patience, because there's a name out there that's really intriguing, and I heard debated online, and you guys are great on Twitter at Detroit Podcast. You guys always jump in and you weigh in and you give ideas that we don't even think about. Would you consider another bridge coach where you realize, look, this is a young team, very young, and there's been a coach before that's been part of a young team but was a bridge and eventually wasn't the guy that got all the credit? Would you take a chance on Mark Jackson, come in, develop an identity, get the swagger, and then get them to the level of 45, 50 wins over the next 2-3 years? Because I could even make the argument that the coach that's next outside of Udoka is going to be a bridge coach anyway, because Dwane Casey basically taught them how to be basically grown-ups. Like, okay, show up, bounce the ball, put the ball in the hoop, hopefully more than 40% of the time. It didn't happen as much as we would like, but he got them organized in some fashion. Now you need the next guy to kind of build up, maybe get him to the first round, have some experiences, and then you get the closer that can potentially bring it. Would you take a chance on Mark Jackson? Because some people debate like, hey, if the Warriors gave Mark Jackson a couple more pieces, then Jackson would have gotten some of the shine as opposed to Kerr. I'm okay with that idea, but maybe not with Mark Jackson. Maybe if you do it with Stackhouse, you could do that, or one of the assistants. There's a guy that's a close relationship, I think, assistant from Milwaukee that has a tie with Troy Weaver. Would you be okay with another bridge as long as there was some movement now, some winning?
If Udoka says he does not want to come here, then I'm okay with it. But that's like the only way. Like, if you have a chance to go out and get the guy, you go get the guy. And you let the guy kind of figure it out, and you give him you look at what the Lions have done with Brad Holmes and Dan Campbell, right? Signed them to long-term deals. They both came in here on 6 and 7 year deals. You understand what you got. And what you got right now is you've got a rebuild that has basically stalled at the starting line. So if he's the guy, you go out there, you bring him in, and you sign him to a 7-year deal, and you say, hey, go. If he says no, okay, cool, go get Mark Jackson, and let's do a 3-4 year deal, and let's see what happens. Let's reevaluate in a couple years. So it depends on if you can get the guy. If Udoka says, no, I'm going someplace else, I don't necessarily like what you have to offer, it just doesn't fit what I'm looking for, or, I don't know, Tom Gores lowballs him or something, I don't know, something crazy happens, then yeah, I'm cool with it, because I think Mark Jackson is a really good basketball coach. I think Mark Jackson helped revolutionize the game. I think the ability to jack up 3-pointers from just about everywhere, yeah, it's because Steph Curry's really, really good, right? And Klay Thompson's really, really good. But you had to build in a bit of a philosophy to work those guys into getting open behind the arc and build those guys up to being confident enough to shoot those shots regularly and put those guys in positions to one, grow up, 2, master their game, and 3, get better while they were doing it all. So, yeah, I think Mark Jackson's a very good basketball coach, and I would not have a problem. But if you can go get the guy, you go get the guy. It's kind of like in wrestling. What do we say? To be the man, you got to beat the man. So if you got a chance to go get the man,
go get the man. Please. But, of course, and we'll talk about it, maybe put it on the sheet for next week. Are the Pistons more attractive? I think people are saying, well, wait till the lottery. If you know you go number 1, then you're going to have the opportunity to get the coach. Are the Pistons more attractive than Houston with lifestyle, being in Detroit, the young team? Because Troy does love himself some bigs, but they got no shooters. Houston might present a coach a faster way to potentially get to success because right now, the Pistons, the way they're set up, this job is a bridge job. You got to get these guys to kind of learn how to win. You got to get these guys to play basketball, play defense, hold them accountable, do some things that will move this along and continue to develop the players. So we'll see. We'll see. Maybe the ping pong balls will fall in the Pistons' favor because they do have the best odds with the worst record in the NBA to land Victor Wembanyama. So I'm hoping, but there's still question marks about this player because he got taller over the last 3 weeks. I mean, literally today he got taller, and he's starting to look like a guy that's 7'5". That's a little different. And now you're starting to kind of talk into, is this kind of like some of those players that are over 7 feet tall that end up being busts? So we'll see if the Pistons end up landing with the number 1 pick. It might be in their best interest maybe to get unlucky and end up being with number 2 or number 3, so they don't have to make the decision on a player that is really intriguing, but also his size is very interesting to look at. One final thought. I did say it to my wife, unfortunately. Look, I'm not a person that, obviously being a psychologist, I'm allowed to say, hey, as a sports fan, man, I would have loved to have had Itzhak Paredes on the Detroit Tigers roster. Okay? Did the Tampa Bay Rays pull a fast one on Al Avila? I can't give him credit. Everybody pulled a fast one on the former Tigers GM. So and everybody was happy. We were happy that the Tigers got Austin Meadows. But unfortunately, earlier this week, had to take 10 days off because of mental health issues, and his mental health is not in order. So I'm not going to sit here and be like some people online and be like, you got to cut him, you got to move on from him, you got to support him. It stinks that this is kind of how it went, juxtaposed with the fact that the Rays, and just juxtaposed with the fact I think Paredes hit a grand slam already this year. It sucks because the Tigers blow. They're 2-7. They're not good. Horrible run differential. Terrible pitching. No hitting. Javi Baez is just a guy now that has moved into a zone where you can put him on a dartboard and just get your kicks off of throwing the darts at his head because he doesn't know how to have any sense or semblance of what plate discipline is. It just sucks for the fans that are really nasty online because there's some comments that were made and posted and tweeted regarding Austin Meadows that were kind of out of order. And let's have some class, guys. But at the same time, it is fair to say that, you know what? The Rays, when they targeted a player, they knew what they were doing, and the Tigers have gotten the shitty end of the deal so far in the Paredes-Austin Meadows deal.
Yeah, and look, if you're a fan, you have every right to be upset about that trade. You have every right to be annoyed about what Al Avila did. But I think you're out of line when you start calling somebody out for their mental health issues. And look, my initial reaction to that news coming out was like, are you serious right now? Like, can you just kind of get it together? And look, I know I'm in the wrong for that initial reaction. I do. But that was my initial reaction. But you know what I didn't do? I didn't go to Twitter. I didn't post that. I didn't go tag Austin Meadows in that. I thought it, and then I was like, you know what? Get your stuff together. You're better than that.
Yeah, move on.
Guys obviously has mental issues. He has an anxiety disorder. He needs to get that figured out. I do believe that was part of the reason that Tampa Bay traded him away. Yeah. I think he was dealing with these things, and obviously these things don't show up on a physical. These things are usually dealt with behind the doors, and I think Tampa Bay kind of got over on you a little bit.
They did.
And Al Avila, I don't think, did a very good job of vetting this trade. I think fans, though, you are in the wrong if you're condemning this guy for these issues. Yeah, you can be frustrated about it. Yeah, you can be upset about it. But to go out and to basically berate him online, to berate the team online, to say all these negative things, like, that's not making the situation better. If anything, all it's doing is making things worse, especially for him. So I think you're a little bit out of line if you're doing that. But look, you have the right to be upset by the trade, and you have the right to be a little bit triggered by this information that came out over the weekend. But with all that being said, you do not have the right to go out and make his life a living hell, and you do not have the right to go out and basically voice your shitty opinion to the team or to himself. Like, you don't need to do that.
Yeah, and it just stinks too because, man, you would have loved a hitter on this roster. You don't got anybody, and Itzhak Paredes would have been great, but unfortunately, it just wasn't meant to be, and it just juxtaposed with everything going on with the Tigers. One thing I'll say, and it just sucks because you realize, look, the Tigers are a Major League Baseball organization, all right? You can't have photos of rusted-out seats being shown nationally. That is horrible. You got to have some level of class and decorum out there. It's the new season. Everybody's got a phone. If you got a rusted-out seat and it stays there, that's a problem. And two, I am never one to just be like, you know what, let's just throw a 7-foot wall out there and let's just wing it. Winging it is terrible because, it's like every group has a person that has that fine-tooth comb that brushes everything. In our group, that's Kenneth. Kenneth is on my ass about everything. If I miss a tweet and a comma, he's like, you're a professional. Don't you know how to put a tweet in a comma? I'm like, bro, okay, fine, I got it. Oh, fine, I messed up. You're a professional. You're supposed to do this. Okay, that in of itself will put a little bit of pressure on you. You are a great observer of sports. I don't want to fuck up and have Adam be like, you ran last week's show on this week's podcast. What are you doing? So every week, fine-tooth comb, you listen to the broadcast. You put it up right. You double-check, triple-check. That's why you can air 500 shows and never fuck up on a Thursday. What the Tigers did, they put up a wall, and everybody's like, this shit looks horrible. And they're like, they didn't do anything. All they did was put up a wall so they could slap a bunch of Jimmy Johns ads on their wall. And I don't understand that. And I'm blessed not to be that way and to want to be like, don't they have anybody that's like, dude, that shit looks like ass. That shit looks cheap. That shit looks like, that's going to embarrass us. Like, you know what it is? Arabs, we talk. And not only do we talk, we tell everybody, John got a lawn service. It's horrible. Who the hell's he paying? He's probably paying $40 a cut, and that cut's terrible. We tell everybody. Not only we tell our friends, we tell our priests, John got a lawn service, and he's paying way more than he's supposed to be paying, and his lawn looks like ass. So I make sure my lawn don't look like ass so that people don't laugh at me. And it gives you this little more pressure to conduct yourself well, to not have a business that flops, to not have a car that ends up on the side of the road, because the first person that would be my brother-in-law. He'd be like, your Jeep ass is on the side of the road. I'd be like, fuck, man, just fix my tire. Just show me how to change this tire and shut up. I don't want to hear your trash talking today. Just wait till you send the group message tomorrow. Just change my tire. And he's like, so in the end, who the hell is watching Comerica Park? Where's the standards? It's just disappointing at the highest level that, one, you put out a shitty team, two, your park is terrible, and three, the worst part, and I'll get off my soapbox, you brought in the fences so the other team can hit more homers than you. What the fuck is going on? Leave the park alone.
I think that's the biggest issue, right?
Leave the park alone. The biggest issue.
Like, it looks bad. But I think that is the biggest issue. You don't have any bats in your lineup that can get the ball over the fence. And defensively, you aren't a very athletic team that can really capitalize on having those short fences. So look, I'm in agreement with you, man. This team is tough to watch, and it is absolutely brutal.
And what it is, and what it goes to, is standards. Where are the standards? Doesn't anybody what do people do? Do they just and no offense, like I said, I'm a psychologist. What if someone talks trash? Do people cry? Do people get their butt hurt? No. When Kenny does that, I'm like, you motherfucker. Okay, but he's right. You know, he's like, you guys don't know this person and you guys are a wrestling podcast? Well, okay, you're right. But it's like, I don't want to watch that. So I'll make excuses. But don't they have somebody that goes through it and tells them, like, hey, this doesn't look good? Or I wonder, because I've never been a part of that. I've always welcomed critiques, and I don't want, listen, I blow smoke up my own ass all day long. I don't need more people to do it. I want people that say, this sucked, do this better. That's how I've always been. So I would have loved to have played for Belichick. I would have loved to have played for Bill Parcells, because I don't need, if you're at the NFL, I don't need you to blow smoke up my ass. I know I'm good. You drafted me. You know, get me to the point where I get a ring, and then we'll celebrate later. You know, so in my mind, I don't understand that standard. Like, you need to have Major League Baseball standards. And right now, the Tigers and Pistons are not meeting the standard that you would want. But that's the way it goes. So, well, in the end, that's how I'm going to look at it. Cuz, great podcast, always good times. Make sure you follow Adam on Twitter at AdamRSJROZ. Follow the network at Detroit Podcast. Our 60 minutes are up. I enjoyed it. Very good debriefing. Allowed us to get all the shit off of our chest. Cuz, that was fun. Lions got better. Pistons got better. Tigers, they got a ways to go. But in the end, we'll be here on the next episode of Doc and Jock to break it all down. Thanks, cuz.